You don't get the life you want by wishing. You don't earn wealth by copying tactics or faking confidence. You become rich, truly, deeply, and permanently rich when your identity demands it. Because the riches you want, the power you crave, the freedom you obsess over when you lie awake at night, they belong to a version of you that does not yet exist. And that's the part no one wants to say out loud. You can read the books, you can say the affirmations, you can follow the routines, but if your identity hasn't changed, your reality never will. Because money is not attracted to desire, it's attracted to alignment. Who are you being right now? Not on your best days, but when no one is watching, when the doubt creeps in, when the temptations whisper, when the old version of you claws at the door begging to take over again. This is where the real transformation begins. Not in behavior, in belief, not in surface changes. In cellular rewiring, you must become the man your goals belong to. And that man does not think like you. He does not speak like you. He does not move like you. He has died to who you are now and resurrected into someone unrecognizable. Carl Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Translation, the man you must become is not hiding in your fantasies, he's buried in your shadows. Your fears, your shame, your addictions, your broken agreements with yourself. Until you face them, not avoid, not numb, but face, you will remain broke. Not just financially, spiritually, mentally, energetically, because your current identity was built to survive, not to dominate. It was built to please, to cope, to remain accepted by a world that rewards safety over sovereignty. But sovereignty, true power, demands a funeral. You must bury the version of you who chooses comfort. You must kill the one who hesitates. You must silence the one who says, "I'm doing my best," when deep down you know you're not. You're managing, you're adapting, you're maintaining the identity of a man who hopes life gets easier instead of becoming the force that bends life into shape. Because you can't build an empire with a civilian identity. You can't become unstoppable with a belief system built on trauma and validation. You can't attract riches if your spirit still flinches at discipline. You must become someone new. Not pretend, not perform. Transform, and transformation is violent. It means you must stand in front of the mirror and ask, who am I without my wounds? Who am I without this fear? Who am I if I stop playing small? It means you stop identifying with your past and start writing your future from conviction, not conditioning. You are not your history. You are the habits you protect. And every habit is a vote for the man you're becoming. So if you want wealth, if you want impact, if you want peace, stop focusing on what to do. Focus on who you must be. Because the riches you want will not negotiate with the man you are today. They are already reserved for the version of you who refuses to break his own word, who moves in silence because he's too busy becoming legendary, who doesn't just say, "I want more," but burns the bridge to anything less. That version of you isn't found. He's forged in fire, in solitude, in standards so high that they make the old you gasp for air. And when you become him, not act, not pretend, but become, you don't have to chase riches. They find you because they recognize their rightful owner. They recognize the scent of discipline, the weight of certainty, the vibration of a man who has died to weakness and risen in sovereignty. A man who doesn't wait for abundance, he embodies it. A man who no longer negotiates with procrastination, with mediocrity, with the emotional volatility of a world still asleep. The riches you want aren't seduced by ambition. They're drawn to frequency. And your frequency isn't shaped by words, it's shaped by standards. What you allow, what you demand. what you refuse to tolerate, even in private, because the universe doesn't respond to what you post. It responds to what you practice. It doesn't reward who you pretend to be. It rewards who you become when it's hard to breathe, but you keep going anyway. You want to change your bank account? Change your self-concept. You want to earn like a king? Then stop thinking like a pawn. Stop shrinking. Stop softening. Stop letting the world convince you that smallness is noble. There is nothing noble about betraying your potential. There is nothing sacred about staying quiet while your soul starves. There is no dignity in dimming your light just to be tolerated by people who fear their own power. You must outgrow them, not in arrogance, in alignment, because your current identity is like an old skin. It fit once. It protected you, but now it suffocates you. And every time you delay shedding it, you delay your destiny. So stop tweaking the surface. Start rebuilding the system from the ground up, from the root out, your habits, your thoughts, your circle, your inputs, your rituals, your agreements with yourself. All of it rebuilt to serve a man who will no longer ask for permission to rise. And here's the brutal truth. You will lose people. You will grieve comfort. You will offend the version of you that needed to be liked more than he needed to be free. Let it all go. Because freedom doesn't come from keeping the peace. It comes from making war with anything in you that still whispers, maybe I'm not enough. It comes from beheading the voice that says, one day, and replacing it with day one. No, this is not motivation. This is metamorphosis. You don't become rich by doing rich things. You become rich by no longer being poor in identity, poor in focus, poor in discipline, poor in belief, poor in how you see yourself. Because the real poverty is not in your wallet. It's in your wiring. It's in the low ceiling you've learned to live beneath. It's in the loop you replay every day that says, this is just who I am. But it's not. It never was. It's who you settled for. And today that man dies. Because the riches you want don't just require effort. They require a resurrection of the part of you that remembers who you were before the world made you forget. So rise, not louder, but deeper, not with noise, but with nerve, and build the identity that wealth cannot ignore. Build the identity that speaks in silence. That radiates value without needing validation. That moves rooms without lifting a finger. Because that man doesn't just want success. He is success. By design, by depth, by decision. The world isn't waiting for another man who's trying his best. The world is starving for the man who demands more from himself than it ever could. The man who no longer breaks his promises when no one is watching. The man who no longer negotiates with the weaker voices in his head. The man who doesn't flinch under pressure, he sharpens under it. That's who the riches are waiting for. The deals, the doors, the respect, the empire. They don't belong to the man who wants them. They belong to the man who's become inevitable. And you become inevitable the moment you stop looking for who to follow and start becoming the blueprint. You are not here to replicate. You are here to redefine yourself, your lineage, your future. But only if you are willing to let go of who you've been. Only if you are willing to shed the skin of safety and step naked into the fire of reinvention. Because everything you desire lives on the other side of a funeral, the funeral of your current identity. Are you willing to bury it? Are you willing to kill comfort with your own hands? Are you willing to walk alone long enough to become the man who commands crowds with his energy, not his ego? Because that man That man doesn't chase opportunity. He is the opportunity. That man doesn't hustle for scraps. He builds a table and chooses who eats at it. That man doesn't hope to be rich. He builds himself into a vault. And the world lines up to pay for access. So here it is, the final truth. The riches you want, the real ones, not the ones that glitter, but the ones that govern. They are waiting, not for your effort, not for your hustle, not for your vision board. They are waiting for a new identity. And now, the only question that matters, are you willing to become the man they're waiting for? Because until you are, every strategy you try will collapse under the weight of your old wiring. Every opportunity you touch will slip through your hands. Not because you weren't capable, but because you were still carrying the identity of a man who only believes in results but hasn't yet become the result. The man who waits for evidence will never lead. The man who needs proof before action will always follow. But the man who decides who he is before the world reflects it back. That man bends time. He collapses probability. He commands outcomes. Because he no longer plays by the rules of probability. He writes new laws by becoming someone the universe must obey. And here's what they won't tell you. It's not about learning more. It's not about trying harder. It's about dream-making yourself so completely that even your past wouldn't recognize you. So completely that wealth doesn't feel like a miracle. It feels like a match. A perfect mirror of the internal kingdom you built without applause. That's how you become a magnet. Not through manipulation, through mastery. Mastery over your time. Mastery over your thoughts. Mastery over your reactions. Mastery over your hunger. Because when your hunger is pure, not rooted in lack, but anchored in truth, you become undeniable. You become inevitable. And what was once far off, what once felt impossible, what once seemed like it belonged to them, now belongs to you. Because now you've done what most never will. You didn't just work harder. You rose higher. You didn't just chase a better life. You became a man worthy of it. You didn't just change your habits. You rebuilt your identity from the bones of your old self. And now the world begins to rearrange, not because it changed, but because you did. This is your line in the sand. This is the hour. You stop being someone with potential and start being someone with a presence. Because the riches you want never belong to the man you were. They belong to the man who is born today. The man you decide to be, with no turning back, no soft landings, no compromises. Just a new identity, built in fire, forged in solitude, and crowned in silence. Now walk, because wealth already knows who you are. It's just been waiting for you to remember, because you were never meant to live at the surface. You were never meant to be another optimized algorithm of productivity. You were meant to descend into the root, into the dark, into the psyche itself, and from that depth rise as something undeniable. This is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke of individuation. The process by which a man stops living from the borrowed fragments of others and finally becomes whole. And wholeness is magnetic, not because it's perfect, but because it is real. It's not curated, it's not branded, it's not filtered. It is. The world doesn't need more performers. It needs presence. It needs men who've stared into their own abyss and walked out with fire in their hands. That's you once you stop clinging to the identity that keeps you predictable. Predictable to yourself, predictable to your failures, predictable to everyone who benefits from you staying exactly where you are. But unpredictability is the mark of evolution. When your moves become unreadable, when your rhythm no longer matches the mediocrity around you, when you disappear and return recoded. That's when they know something happened. That's when the world begins to pay you in ways you once thought were impossible. Because the universe doesn't compensate the man who is trying. It compensates the man who has become. And what does he become? He becomes the one who doesn't just dream. He executes. He becomes the one who doesn't collapse under weight. He builds muscle from it. He becomes the one who doesn't hide from responsibility. He demands it. And from that weight, that pressure, that calling, he carves out a new name. One that doesn't need to be spoken. One that is felt. You know that man. He's been whispering to you for years. He's the one watching from the corners of your mind while you scroll. He's the one aching in your chest when you settle. He's the one you glimpse in moments of clarity. The version of you who is beyond powerful, but waiting to be chosen. And now, the time for waiting is over. Because the riches you want are not hiding from you. They are being guarded by the version of yourself that has the spine to claim them. And that version, he doesn't beg. He doesn't panic. He doesn't envy. He doesn't play small. He walks with something ancient. He speaks like a man who has buried who he used to be. And he demands nothing because everything is drawn to him automatically. That's not magic. That's metaphysics. That's vibration. That's alignment. That's Jung's deepest truth. When you integrate your shadow, when you stop hiding from what you fear inside yourself, you become whole. And the whole man is terrifying to a world built on fragmented identity. He is not easily moved. He is not easily bought. He is not easily replaced. He is a mountain among sandcastles. And from now on, that is who you become. Not because it's trending, not because it's profitable, because it's the only way to truly live. Your old identity was never broken. It was incomplete. Now it is your duty to finish the construction, to choose every thought, to wield every emotion, to walk with every wound, not as a victim, but as a warrior with memory. Because the riches you want, the money, the impact, the deep peace, they are not afterthoughts. They're echoes, reflections of your internal empire. And that empire begins here, in this decision, in this moment, to no longer postpone your power, to no longer fear your future, to no longer carry the corpse of who you used to be. Let him go. You are not here to repeat. You are here to rebuild. And once you do, the world will come, not to reward you, but to align with the man you were always meant to be. And when the man you were meant to be fully arrives, he won't make announcements. He won't broadcast his return. He'll simply be, and the world will feel it. He will speak less, but when he does, his words will cut through noise like a blade through fog, because they don't come from opinion. They come from integration. This is the man who no longer asks, what do I need to do? He asks, who do I need to embody to make that question irrelevant? Because once you become the identity that creates, that leads, that earns, action becomes instinct. Discipline becomes default. Abundance becomes inevitable. This man doesn't just hold boundaries. He is the boundary, not from force, but from frequency. Low-value situations don't even approach him. They disqualify themselves. He walks into rooms differently, not with swagger, but with weight. The kind of weight that makes time slow down. The kind of weight that makes people wonder, what has he been through to move like that? He has seen death, not physical, but psychological. He has buried his lesser selves. He has sat in the fire of self-confrontation. He has endured the shattering silence where most men run. And he has risen not clean, but clear. This is what makes him rich. Not the bank account, but the spine. Not the brand, but the blood. Not the empire, but the essence. The world pays this man, not for what he does, but for who he is. Because who he is changes people. He is no longer trying to get rich. He is building royalty. Every decision is a brick. Every discipline is mortar. Every act of restraint, every refusal to fold, every early morning where the weaker man stayed in bed. These are the cathedrals he constructs silently inside himself. And once those inner walls are high enough, once the architecture of his character is unshakable, the riches arrive like rain after drought, not to save him, but to serve him. Because now he doesn't just want wealth. He governs it. He doesn't just consume. He creates. He doesn't just ask for opportunity. He becomes the ecosystem where opportunity breeds. And the final piece, he no longer needs to prove anything. Because when you've rebuilt yourself brick by brutal brick, when you've bled in silence and risen without applause, you don't need recognition. You are recognition. The world begins to orbit around you, not because you took shortcuts, but because you became the axis. That is the identity that holds wealth. That is the truth they won't put on posters. That is the work no one can do for you. That is the you that must be forged. And once he arrives, everything you ever wanted begins to arrive with him. Not because you were lucky, because you were finally aligned, fully, boldly, permanently. And so now you stand not on a stage, not in front of a crowd, but in front of yourself. The war is quiet now, not because there are no more battles, but because you've become the weapon. You are no longer waiting for permission. You are no longer seeking to be saved. You are no longer negotiating with mediocrity, with your past, with your excuses. You are no longer who you were. And the world will feel it before it sees it. Before the money comes, before the empire stands, before the name echoes, because it always starts here, in the identity, in the soul, in the decision that you will never return to the man who tolerated less than what he was built for. The riches you want, they are no longer somewhere out there. They are here now, waiting for one final act, embodiment. So breathe, stand taller, not for show, but because it's finally time. Time to carry the weight, time to wear the crown, time to walk as if the universe has already answered, because it has. You became the man, the one they said didn't exist, the one you once doubted you could become, the one who no longer folds, the one who builds and never breaks, the man for whom wealth is no longer a dream, but a reflection. Now go, silently, boldly, completely. You've changed, and everything is about to change with you. You already know who you're meant to be. You've always known, not in your words, not in your thoughts, but in that deep primal rhythm beneath the noise, the feeling that haunts you in silence, when the world quiets down and the truth gets loud, the version of you that moves without hesitation, speaks without apology, creates without fear, leads without needing to be followed. That version of you, it's not a fantasy. It's a memory, a soul-deep recollection of who you were before you were broken, before they told you to be realistic, before you were taught to sit still, smile small, play nice, and stay within the lines drawn by people who never even built their own life. But something inside you has always rebelled against that. Something wild, something sacred, The part of you that remembers what you came here to do, not just exist, but embody destiny. And that's a tragedy, isn't it? Not that we aim too high and miss, but that we aim too low and hit. We become loyal to the lesser self. We rehearse mediocrity until it becomes muscle memory. We live as ghosts of our potential because we forgot that becoming isn't passive. It's an act of war. You think your future will show up when the time is right? You think it will arrive when you finally healed enough, read enough, rested enough, waited long enough? It won't. It's not coming because it was never supposed to. You are supposed to go to it. And the only way to arrive there is to act like the person you're meant to be. Now, not someday. Now. And acting doesn't mean faking. It means choosing. It means taking the weight of who you could be and carrying it on your shoulders, like it's already yours. It means showing up today with the integrity, the boldness, the conviction of the future self you say you believe in. Because belief without embodiment is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of transformation. You think you'll feel ready one day? No. Readiness is a myth. It's a trap designed to keep you in cycles of almost. But becoming is not about being ready. It's about being willing. Willing to fail publicly. Willing to speak before your voice is steady. Willing to move when your legs are still shaking. Willing to make decisions like the future is already here. That is how you collapse timelines. That is how you override destiny. Not by waiting, by walking like it's already done. Carl Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And that truth should break you, because most of what you've said, you never became. Most of what you've dreamed, you've delayed. Most of what you know you are, you've postponed for the illusion of safety. But safety is not the goal. Wholeness is. And you cannot be whole while abandoning the self that came here to change everything. You're not here to survive. You're here to remember who you are in full. And the only way to do that is to act like it now. So how does that version of you move? How do they breathe? How do they walk into rooms? How do they respond to doubt, to rejection, to failure, to fear? Because if you knew you were chosen, you would act like it. If you knew your success was inevitable, you'd move like it. You'd stop flinching. You'd stop hesitating. You'd stop editing your power to make insecure people feel more comfortable. But you've been tricked. Tricked into thinking humility means shrinking. That confidence means arrogance. That self-belief is dangerous. That your fullness is a threat. And they're right. It is a threat to everything that was built to keep you quiet, to the people who only loved the weak version of you, to the systems that depend on your obedience, to the illusions that shatter under the weight of your presence. Act like the person you're meant to be, and everything false will fall away. Every shallow relationship, every low-frequency distraction, every habit built on fear, it will all dissolve because it was never designed to follow you where you're going. But first, you must step. Step like it's already yours. Not because you've earned it, but because you've remembered it. And what you remember, you reclaim. What you reclaim, you embody. And what you embody, you become. It's not the world that needs to change. It's you. The way you carry yourself. The way you treat your time. The way you speak your truth. The way you walk like your name is already carved into history. Stop shrinking to fit the script Burn the script. Write a new one in blood and fire and certainty. One where you are no longer waiting to feel powerful, but acting like power itself. Because acting is how the psyche reprograms. Because the subconscious doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you do. So do differently. Walk into the gym like your body's already a temple. Step into your work like the deal is already signed. Sit down to write like the words have been waiting for you to return. Speak like your voice is prophecy. Breathe like your life is holy. Because it is. But you've been treating it like an afterthought. A someday. A maybe. A if they let me. They don't need to let you. You're the gate. You're the standard. You're the one who decides when it begins. And it begins the second you start acting like it's already done. Because when you do, your mind gets the message. And when the mind gets the message, the body follows. The habits shift. The identity locks in. The world rearranges. Because you did. And people will ask you, what changed? You did. Not overnight, but in 1,000 invisible choices, to no longer live as a watered-down version of your potential. You chose to act, to lead, to rise, to break, to rebuild, to embody. And that choice, it wasn't a moment. It became your movement. Because once it becomes your movement, you stop chasing moments. You stop chasing highs, dopamine spikes, external milestones that prove you're becoming something. You stop chasing the world's applause because you're too busy becoming your own confirmation. The person you're meant to be is not a role to play. It's a reality to embody. And you don't step into that reality by accident. You step into it with precision, with obsession, with a level of self-respect so ferocious. It scares off anything not rooted in excellence. But let's be honest, you played both parts. You've been the warrior and the wanderer, the builder and the breaker, the visionary and the victim. And somewhere along the way, you started believing that the cracks in your armor meant you weren't worthy of carrying the crown. But you forgot the crown was never made for the flawless. It was made for the forged. And you've been forged in heartbreak, in failure, in nights so dark, even your shadow left. And yet, you're still here, still breathing, still burning, still becoming. So stop asking if you're worthy. Start asking if you're ready to walk like you already are. And let's talk about psyphoria. That electric state of alignment where thought, action, and soul collide into singular clarity, where your entire being is vibrating on the frequency of who you've decided to be. No doubt, no distortion, no more playing tug-of-war with your past, because the person you're meant to be isn't a future self. It's a real you underneath the fear, the noise, the habits you inherited but never questioned. To reach psyphoria, you have to silence the static, all of it, the opinions, the excuses, the scarcity stories playing on loop in your head, because psyphoria can't coexist with confusion. It lives in clarity, and clarity only comes when you act like the person you're meant to be long enough that your old self no longer recognizes you. You want your mind to change? Change your posture. Change how you walk into the room. Change how you introduce yourself. Not with a job title, but with the energy of someone who doesn't need to prove anything anymore. Because when you become the proof, the world has no choice but to reflect it. Let's go deeper. Mindset isn't about thinking positively. It's about thinking precisely, about building a mental environment so high in standard that even your inner critic gets quiet. Because now there's a new ruler on the throne, and that ruler doesn't entertain chaos. You don't get the luxury of being passive anymore. You've outgrown that. Passivity is a betrayal when you know who you're supposed to be. So don't speak like you're unsure. Don't walk like you're undecided. Don't act like you're waiting for something outside you to declare you're ready. You're ready when you say, I no longer need to be rescued. I'm not waiting to be discovered. I'm not seeking a map. I am the map. And once you say it, once you live it, your beliefs start bending. Bending to match the energy you bring to the moment. Because belief isn't just faith. Belief is a frequency. It's how you show up in the small things. It's how you do what needs to be done, even when no one's watching. You act like the person you're meant to be when the world is quiet, when the lights are off, when it's just you and the mirror, and the silence between promises kept and promises broken. So check your patterns. Do they match the self you speak of? Do they match the life you say you're building? Because if they don't, you don't have a problem with discipline. You have a problem with honesty. And honesty is the beginning of all transformation. Because you can't fake alignment. You can't trick the soul. You can only act in accordance with it, or suffer the slow erosion of your potential. And that's the real pain, isn't it? Not the hustle, not the pressure, but the pain of knowing you were meant for more and watching yourself postpone it. That's the ache, the dull throb of, almost, the psychic fatigue of living just under what you're capable of. But that ends now, because now you understand this isn't about motivation. It's about identity. It's about building the kind of relationship with yourself where self-betrayal is no longer an option. Because the self you're meant to be, they are waiting, not in the future, but in the next choice, the next sentence you speak, the next hour of work you do in silence, the next decision to say no to comfort and yes to becoming unrecognizable to your past self. This is the difference between those who dream and those who build, those who wait and those who walk, those who hope for alignment and those who embody it. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be precise. You don't need to feel inspired. You need to be in integrity. You don't need another affirmation. You need to act like the person who already lives in the world you're trying to create. Because when you act like them, you train your nervous system to accept it. You train your mind to expect it. And the universe, it follows your expectation, not your desperation. So raise the standard. Lock into the vision. Act accordingly. Walk like your name is written in fire. Speak like your soul has been crowned. Move like this world was always meant to respond to you. Because it is. Because the world doesn't respond to the loudest voice. It responds to the clearest signal. And clarity doesn't come from overthinking. It comes from alignment, from the ruthless decision to stop walking in two directions, to stop dancing between potential and permission, to stop asking, what if I'm not ready? And start declaring, watch me anyway. Act like the person you're meant to be, and you will destroy every false timeline you've been stuck in. Not by force, but by frequency. Because nothing false can survive in the presence of someone who walks in truth. Not everyone will understand this. They'll call it arrogance. They'll say you've changed. They'll miss the version of you who needed their validation to breathe. Let them miss it. Let them mourn the version of you that made them feel taller because you kept yourself small. Let them gossip. Let them guess. Let them go. Because power, real power, requires loss. You don't get to take everyone with you. You don't get to explain the vision to people who only see with fear. You don't get to drag dead weight into destiny. So release them with love, with fire, with finality, and keep walking. Because your becoming isn't a group project. It's a solo mission. And every time you act like the person you're meant to be, you take one step closer to the life that was always waiting for you on the other side of hesitation. This is where discipline becomes divine. Not a cage, but a crown. Not restriction, but revelation. The sacred order you impose on yourself to honor the power you carry. Because the person you're meant to be doesn't rise by accident. They rise by a ritual, by doing the thing again and again and again, until it becomes who they are. Not just what they do, but what they embody. And embodiment is what separates the seekers from the sovereign. Because seekers are always looking, but the sovereign acts, even when it's dark, even when it's hard, even when the evidence hasn't caught up yet. They act anyway, because they don't need the world to believe in them, when they've already decided to believe in themselves. Carl Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. You've been dreaming long enough. Now it's time to awaken. To walk like the vision already exists inside you. Because it does. And if it lives in you, you don't wait to feel ready. You train for it. You prepare like it's sacred. Because it is. Because you are. So stop acting like a stranger to your own greatness. Stop approaching your life like a visitor. Stop knocking on the door of your future. When you already hold the key, you're not here to blend in. You're here to redefine what it means to be fully human. To live as a walking permission slip for everyone else to remember who they are too. But that only happens when you go first. When you act like the person you're terrified and thrilled to become. The one who doesn't flinch. The one who doesn't fold. The one who doesn't need an invitation to show up fully. So show up. Not tomorrow. Not when the fear is gone. Not when they finally understand you. Now, in the room you're already in, with the tools you already have, with the body you already live in, with the breath you just took. Because this is it. This is the moment the old self dies. Not with fireworks, but with a whisper. I'm done waiting. And in that whisper, your entire life begins to move, to shift, to rise. Because when you act like the person you're meant to be, you become unavailable for anything less. The job, the relationship, the habits, the conversations, the identities. You stop auditioning. You stop explaining. You stop shrinking. Because you finally remembered you were never meant to be discovered. You were meant to be activated by truth, by action, by choice. So choose now. Step now. Speak now. Become now. And let the world adjust to the version of you that never needed to be asked twice. To rise.